So, you know that thing where you try to change something about yourself, maybe even for years, and you just can't quite get there? Maybe you've been trying to quit smoking for years. You know exactly why you should do it. And you might have tried patches, willpower, all the different apps, gums, telling everybody you know so you feel more accountable. And then just one stressful afternoon and boom, it just happens again. Or maybe it's not smoking, maybe it's the drink you have said you would cut back down, or you say yes to things that you mean to say no to, and then you kind of spend the whole next week resenting yourself and everybody involved, right? Don't worry, it is human. These are different things, but the same sentiment underneath. I know exactly what I'm doing, but I can't seem to stop. And the frustrating part isn't that you don't understand it, because you do understand it, right? Maybe you have read all the self help books, you watched all the videos, maybe you even got therapy. You get where it comes from. It just keeps happening anyway. And that gap between knowing and actually changing, that is exactly what CBH is designed for. And in this video, I want to show you what that actually looks like in a typical session. So CBH stands for Cognitive Behavioral Hypnotherapy, right? It's kind of a tongue twister. So let's stick with CBH. It combines two things: CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most well researched therapies we have, and clinical hypnosis. If you haven't watched my video on what hypnosis actually is, I'll link it below because it's worth understanding before everything makes full sense. But the short version is hypnosis is a deeply focused, relaxed state of mind where your analytical mind kind of quiets down a little bit so we can work at much deeper and clearer level. And the reason why that combination is so powerful is this. CBT is brilliant at helping you understand what you are thinking, why it's not serving you, but understanding something in your head and shifting it in your body to the point it becomes a new automatic response that actually drives your behavior. Those are two different things. Hypnosis essentially is what bridges that gap. Okay, let's say somebody comes to me. I'm going to call her Sarah. This is a completely fictional character, not a real client, not a real person. And Sarah tells me she wants to work on anxiety. And she says, "Oh, Andrea, I'm really anxious. I have always have been. I can't switch off. I worry all the time. I sort of lie there awake at night thinking about things constantly. And I hate socializing, even though once I'm there, I'm usually fine." And many, many things. At this point, I think a lot of people expect that therapist to say, "Okay, let's talk about your childhood. Let's figure out why you are like this." And we might even get there, but it's not really the point, and it's not where we start. Where we start is much more specific, because anxiety, that's kind of like a big word, right? It means something different to everybody. So the first thing I want to understand is, what does it look like to you? When does it show up? Where do you feel it in your body? What does the voice in your head telling you? And with Sarah, let's say what came out was this. It wasn't really about big events. It was this kind of constant noise in her head, the sense something was about to go wrong, that she needed to stay on the top of everything. She prepared for every possible outcome, because if she relaxed, God forbid, something would slip, right? Something would be her fault. And she lived with that belief for so long, she just assumed it was her, just how she was. But there was something even deeper underneath, right? She never said it out loud before. She didn't even know she believed it until we found it together. So, in the early part of our work together, this is the part of the CBT within CBH. We start making that invisible stuff visible. Because the thing is, a lot of thoughts that are driving how we feel and what we do, we don't always notice them. They're not really dramatic always. They tend to be quite fast, and most of they're automatic. And they can feel like facts. Example of this is, if I don't keep on the top of it, everything will fall apart. Or if I need help, it means that I'm weak, I can't cope. Or other people manage fine, so there must be something wrong with me, right? So Sarah didn't walk in and tell me all of those things. She didn't know she was thinking them, but we found them together. By slowing down and actually looking at what happens just before she feels anxious, right? What is the thought? What does it mean to her? And if that was true, what does that mean? This technique, by the way, is called downward arrowing. You just keep gently following the thought down because there are many levels. And what you usually find at the bottom isn't some complicated thing, but it's actually quite simple and quite old, but very powerful. Something like, I'm not good enough, or I don't feel safe, or I have to earn my place, or I'm unlovable. These can be very, very powerful beliefs we hold about ourselves. And once you see it clearly, really, you see it and you name it, you kind of hold it up to the light, you can start to ask, is this actually true? And where does it come from? And most importantly, what do I prefer to believe instead? So that's powerful work, but still on its own, it's kind of happening in the conscious mind. And so this is where the hypnosis comes in. And honestly, this is my favorite part of the work. Because once we have done that conscious work together, once Sarah can see her belief, understands where does it comes from, and we started to dispute it, we can then take it somewhere different. We can take it into hypnosis. So what does that look like? Usually she would be in her home as I do these sessions online, so hopefully she's fully comfortable and most importantly, fully in control. And I guide her into this relaxed focus state. This takes maybe 5-10 minutes depending on the person. We use something called induction and deepening. I'm gonna do another video on those separately and some other hypnotic techniques. But back to Sarah, gradually in that relaxed state, the part of the mind that usually tends to argue back when you say, I'm capable, and it says, yes, but. So that part goes quiet. And what it means is that a different way of seeing things can actually land. In other words, we can get some new information in because the noise is not so loud anymore, right? So it's not just to be heard and felt, by the way, but genuinely experienced and felt like a true reality. Second, we can try to introduce a different way of seeing things. So not by arguing with the old belief, because we would have done that before in the CBT part, but by letting Sarah experience the new version of herself that she wants to be. So I might use imagery. I might have her go into a specific situation and see herself being that person, see things differently. I might have her step back into the version of herself that has already moved through something. There are many, many techniques, and it's really hard to describe how it goes until you have experienced it. But the difference between being told you are safe and feeling I'm safe in every cell of your body, that is the difference being in hypnosis. The new belief doesn't just sit in your head, it just lands somewhere deeper. It is really owned. And with clients like Sarah, one of the possible things that might then shift in our work together, if she was a real client, is that maybe she might stop needing to control everything so much as a way of feeling safe. Not because I told her to, but because she understands she doesn't need to. Because in hypnosis, she actually experienced how does it feel like to feel safe and let go and still be okay. So her nervous system would essentially see the evidence. And that really changes things. So that's what sometimes happens in the sessions. Of course, there are many different issues people come up with, so every session is different. But also, CBH isn't just what happens in those 60 minutes we have together. A big part of it is what you take away. So most of my clients get the recording, something I make specifically for them based on what we've worked on. So the language resonates with them, the imagery feels right, and they can just listen to it between the sessions. And this matters because change, as we understand, isn't one big moment. It's a series of small repetitions sometimes. It's the brain hearing a different story again until it just starts to feel true, until the new response becomes the automatic one instead of the old one. I also give clients things to notice and try in the week. So not homework in the sense of some worksheets and tasks, but more like pay attention to this when that comes up. Or try this when you feel that. See what you notice. And then we talk about it in the session. Or sometimes we do some real world experiments, really, because the whole point is that you get better in real life, not just in the session. Because then you don't need to keep coming to me. You don't need to see me forever. So the goal is to build your own skills, you understanding yourself better, and you having the tools you can use on your own. About that, I'm gonna talk in another video as well. But I want to talk about briefly who is CBH actually for. Since CBH is an evidence-based approach and it draws on decades of research in both CBT and clinical hypnosis, it's particularly well suited for things like anxiety, low mood, sleep difficulties, low confidence, self-worth, stress, phobias, and habits like smoking or alcohol, things that haven't really responded to willpower alone. There are many more other things like pain management control, IBS symptom reduction. If you're not sure what your situation fits, that's completely normal. There's actually more detail on the issues I help with page on my website, so I have linked it in the description as well. Or you can always book a free consultation call with me, and we're just gonna figure it out together and see if CBH is a good fit for you or not. Because on that, what CBH tends to not to be really good for are things like active crisis or, let's say, severe trauma that needs a specialist trauma-focused therapy. There are more things that I will always flag, and I'm always honest about that. So if somebody comes to me and what they need is something that I cannot offer, I'm gonna say so, and I'm gonna point them to the right support. But for people who just feel stuck, who a lot of the time understand the problem, but can't seem to shift it, this work tends to move really quickly, actually. So most of the clients I see for somewhere like between 3 and 6 sessions. And that's not because we are rushing it, but because when you're working at the level that is right for you, then things don't need to take years. Now, I want to end with something personal because I didn't come to this work as a complete stranger to it. I know what it is like to be your own worst enemy and essentially sabotage yourself because of some deeply rooted belief. And I also know what it's like when something finally shifts. Not because somebody fixed you, because nothing was really ever broken, but because you decided to let go of that part of yourself that has been a bit stuck in the same old story. And essentially, you created a new story. And that's why I do this work. And it's genuinely the thing I find the most meaningful. So if you are curious about whether CBH might be the right fit for you, I'll put the link below where you can find out more, or you can book a free consultation. And of course, if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. And I'm going to read all of it and I'm going to appreciate all of it. So thank you for watching and see you in the next one.